The Anunnaki are an extraterrestrial race that allegedly came from the planet ניבירו, or Planet X, as it is known today. Planet X was discovered in 1987 at the far reaches of our solar system, but the discovery was not reported until recently. According to the stories, the Anunnaki came to Earth 500,000 years ago in order to look for gold. They landed with 600 of their race and started mining for gold and other precious metals. After a period of 200,000 years, some of the miners started rebelling due to the hard conditions on the planet. Enki, son of Anu, who was a genius and one of the leaders, had a solution to the problem. He suggested making hybrid workers by means of genetic manipulation to do the work. The worker had to be smart enough to do the work, but not smart enough to understand that he was being used. According to stories from various sources, mainly Sumerian clay tablets and old records from the library at the ancient city of Nineveh, the Anunnaki made man by means of mixing their genetic material with that of a local species. There were a number of failed attempts in making the first man described as being malformed, blind, or without spirit. Eventually, some kind of dark ritual was made with the blood of one of the Anunnakis who was murdered for this purpose. Fertilized eggs were inserted into the wombs of 14 Anunnaki women who bore 7 males and 7 females. That was the beginning of the human species in its current version on planet Earth. In the human body, there was partly activated Anunnaki DNA, mixed with that of the local species, but many of the more refined features were switched off, especially telepathic abilities and those that allow the full use of the brain. The Anunnaki employed their human workers successfully for more than 100,000 years, a time span almost unimaginable from our current perception of history. Before the story arrives at our current version of history, there were a few catalytic events. Some were natural events, and some came out of the Anunnaki taste for war and rulership. Among those can be counted the legend of Atlantis and the biblical flood. At a later time, closer to what we recognize as history, after the rehabilitation of Earth with the humans who survived the flood, the Anunnaki inserted religion. This developed partly out of their own misconceptions of separation, guilt, and punishment, but mostly religion was introduced as a means of controlling the ever-growing human population. At that time, there was a pantheon of 12 gods, who were the heads of the ruling families. They were worshipped and respected by all humans. The struggle for leadership that was carried on nearly from the beginning escalated. The descendants of Enki and Enlil started warring using human armies. The first battle was inconclusive, and Marduk, who felt betrayed by his relatives, was the one who turned the battle into a nuclear war. 7 atomic bombs were dropped on the Sinai Peninsula area that was the Anunnaki control center. Unfortunately for the humans, there was a wind in the direction of Sumer. The wind blew and carried the fallout to the dense human population. Destruction and death came swiftly, and this was the end of the prosperous Sumerian culture. The whole area was made uninhabitable for the next 300 years. This horrifying act served Marduk well, and he was declared the high ruler of Earth by the Anunnaki. For the humans, it was the time when the transition from worshipping many gods to only one god came to mind. Since that time, even mentioning the names of another god could mean death. Marduk called himself Jehovah and became the only god of the 3 large world religions that came out of the Middle East. The war and its consequence is described in the Sumerian texts, translated by the foremost expert on Sumer, Professor Samuel Kramer. On the land fell a calamity, one unknown to man, one that had never been seen before, one which could not be withstood, a great storm from heaven, a land-annihilating storm, an evil wind like a rushing torrent, a battling storm joined by a scorching heat. By day it deprived the land of the bright sun, in the evening the stars did not shine. The people, terrified, could hardly breathe. The evil wind clutched them, does not grant them another day. Mouths were drenched with blood, heads wallowed in blood, the face was made pale by the evil wind. It caused cities to be desolated, houses to become desolate, stalls to become desolate, the sheepfolds to be emptied. Sumer's rivers it made flow with water that is bitter. Its cultivated fields grow weeds, its pastures grow withering plants. But that was not the only battleground where the Anunnakis used nuclear weapons. The Indian text, the Mahabharata, says, Dense arrows of flame, like a great shower, issued forth upon creation, encompassing the enemy. A thick gloom swiftly settled upon the Pandava hosts. All points of the compass were lost in darkness. Fierce wind began to blow upward, showering dust and gravel. Birds croaked madly. The very elements seemed disturbed. The earth shook, scorched by a terrible, violent heat of this weapon. Elephants burst into flame and ran to and fro in a frenzy. Over a vast area, other animals crumpled to the ground and died. From all points of the compass, the arrows of flame rained continuously and fiercely.
Only the beginning. Only the beginning.